The planet Epsilon 7 was in trouble. It wasn't the kind of trouble that could be fixed with a few repairs or some clever thinking. This was big, dangerous, and growing worse by the day. The once beautiful world, covered in forests, rivers, and vibrant wildlife, was now being eaten alive. Something small but deadly had invaded the planet. The Zorans, the peaceful and intelligent species who called Epsilon 7 home, were losing their battle against it. The invaders weren't giant monsters or alien warships. They were tiny creatures called the Vorthax. These microscopic parasites were invisible to the naked eye, but their effects were devastating. The Vorthax consumed everything organic they touched: plants, animals, even the soil itself. Nothing seemed safe from them. Entire forests turned into lifeless wastelands within days. Rivers dried up as the parasites devoured the nutrients in the water. The air grew heavy and stale because there were no plants left to produce oxygen. For the Zorans, this was more than just an environmental disaster. It was an existential threat. They were a highly advanced civilization, capable of building incredible machines and solving complex problems. But this was different. The Vorthax didn't follow logic or rules. They were chaotic, spreading uncontrollably and leaving destruction in their wake. No matter what the Zorans tried, nothing worked. Their technology, designed for precision and efficiency, was useless against something so unpredictable. Desperation set in among the Zorans. They knew they couldn't fight the Vorthax alone, so they did what any species would do in their situation. They asked for help. Using their powerful communication systems, they sent out a distress signal across the galaxy. The message was simple and urgent. "Our planet is dying. We need assistance." They broadcasted it on every frequency, hoping someone, anyone, would hear and respond, but no one came. The Krillians, a proud warrior race known for their strength, ignored the call. They saw the situation as hopeless and not worth risking their own lives. The Varnox, another advanced species, refused to get involved, claiming it was too dangerous to interfere with something they didn't fully understand. Other civilizations either dismissed the plea or simply didn't care. Days turned into weeks, and still there was no response. The Zorans began to lose hope. Were they truly alone in their fight? Then, just when all seemed lost, a reply came. It wasn't from a powerful empire or a legendary hero. It was from Earth, a small blue planet orbiting a modest star in a quiet corner of the galaxy. Humans, a relatively young and inexperienced species, had heard the Zorans' cry for help, and unlike everyone else, they decided to act. On Earth, the United Galactic Council reviewed the Zorans' message carefully. After much debate, they agreed to send a team to Epsilon 7. The mission would be risky, but humanity had always prided itself on helping others in need. The Council selected 4 individuals for the job, each chosen for their unique skills and expertise. Alex Carter was one of them. He was an engineer with a reputation for solving problems quickly and creatively. Alex wasn't afraid to take things apart and put them back together in new ways. His hands-on approach often made him the go-to person in difficult situations. Rachel Bennett, a biologist, was another key member of the team. She had spent years studying alien ecosystems and was fascinated by how life adapted to different environments. Her knowledge of biology would be crucial in understanding the Vorthax. Joining them were Daniel Hayes and Emily Dawson. Daniel was the pilot of the mission. Quiet and serious, he took his responsibilities very seriously. Flying through space was second nature to him, but he wasn't thrilled about landing on a planet overrun by parasites. Emily, on the other hand, was a linguist. Her job was to communicate with the Zorans and ensure that the humans understood their language and culture. She was curious and open-minded, always eager to learn about new species. Together, the 4 boarded the Odyssey, a sleek spaceship designed for long-distance travel. As they prepared for launch, the weight of the mission hung over them. None of them had ever faced anything like this before. They were heading into the unknown, armed only with their wits and determination. When the Odyssey finally arrived at Epsilon 7, the sight that greeted them was heartbreaking. From orbit, the planet looked sickly. Large swaths of land were gray and barren, devoid of the greenery that should have covered them. Even from space, the effects of the vortex were clear. As the ship descended, the team braced themselves for what they might find on the surface. They landed near a Zoran city which stood eerily quiet. The buildings, made of smooth, crystalline material, shimmered faintly in the dim light. Waiting for them was Kalen, a Zoran ambassador. His translucent skin glowed softly, and his large, expressive eyes conveyed both sadness and relief. Through Emily's translation device, Kalen explained the situation in detail. He spoke of the vortex's relentless spread and the Zorans' failed attempts to stop them. As the humans listened, they realized just how dire things were. The Zorans had tried everything: chemical sprays, energy barriers, even robotic exterminators, but nothing had worked. The vortex were too adaptable, too fast. Every attempt to contain them only made the problem worse. Alex inspected some of the Zoran equipment, while Rachel studied samples of the vortex under a portable microscope. What she discovered shocked her. The parasites operated as a hive mind, working together in perfect harmony. They communicated instantly, sharing information and strategies to overcome obstacles. This made them nearly impossible to defeat using conventional methods. Meanwhile, tensions began to rise among the human team. Daniel was skeptical about whether they could succeed where others had failed. He believed the mission was too dangerous and wanted to focus on keeping everyone safe. Emily disagreed, arguing that abandoning the Zorans would make humanity no better than the other species who had ignored their plea. Rachel and Alex tried to stay neutral, but the disagreement cast a shadow over the group. Despite the challenges, the humans pressed on. They were determined to find a solution no matter how difficult it might be. For the first time in weeks, the Zorans felt a glimmer of hope. Maybe, just maybe, these strange visitors from Earth could save their planet. But deep down, everyone knew the road ahead would be long and fraught with danger. The humans stepped out of their ship, the Odyssey, onto the surface of Epsilon 7. The air was cool and carried a faint metallic smell. Around them, the landscape stretched out in every direction, gray, barren, and lifeless. What had once been fields of green plants and rivers full of water was now a wasteland. Rachel Bennett looked around, her heart sinking. She had seen pictures of thriving ecosystems destroyed by environmental disasters, but this was worse than anything she had imagined. Kalen, the Zoran ambassador, approached them. His tall, slender frame moved gracefully despite the weight of his sadness. He greeted the humans with a slight bow, his shimmering skin catching the dim light. Emily Dawson activated her translation device and began speaking to him. Kalen explained how the vortex had spread across the planet. They started small, almost unnoticed, but soon they grew into an unstoppable force. The vortex consume everything, Kalen said through the translator. They eat the soil, the plants, even the air we breathe. We have tried many things, but nothing stops them. Rachel nodded thoughtfully. She opened her portable lab kit and took a sample of the ground. Under the microscope, she saw the vortex for the first time. They were tiny, almost invisible, but their movements were frantic and chaotic. They swarmed over each other, devouring whatever they touched. Rachel frowned. These creatures were not like anything she had studied before. They adapted quickly, spreading faster than anyone could predict. Alex Carter walked over to examine some of the Zoran equipment scattered nearby. It was advanced far beyond anything humans had on Earth, but it was broken and useless now. Alex knelt down, running his fingers over the smooth metal surface of one machine. He noticed that the design was precise, almost too perfect. "Your technology is amazing," he said to Kalen, "but it's too rigid. It doesn't account for unpredictability." Kalen tilted his head, confused. "Rigid? What do you mean?" Alex stood up and gestured toward the machines. "These tools are built to do one thing perfectly, but the vortex don't follow rules. You need something flexible, something that can adapt as fast as they do." Kalen's expression softened, and he nodded slowly. He understood what Alex was saying, but he also knew that the Zorans were not capable of creating such technology. Their society valued harmony and precision, not chaos and improvisation. That was why they needed the humans. As the team worked, Daniel Hayes kept his distance. He stood near the ship, arms crossed, watching the others interact with the Zorans. He didn't trust this mission. To him, it felt like they were walking into a trap. The Vorthax were clearly dangerous, and no one, not the Zorans, not the Krillians, not any other species, had been able to stop them. Why should humans be any different? Emily noticed Daniel's unease and walked over to him. "You've been quiet," she said gently. "What's on your mind?" Daniel sighed. "I'm just thinking about how this feels like a lost cause. We're risking our lives for a planet that's already dead. What if we can't fix this? What if we make it worse?" Emily placed a hand on his shoulder. "We won't know unless we try, and besides, these people need our help. If we don't step up, who will?" Daniel didn't respond. He wanted to believe Emily was right, but doubt lingered in his mind. He glanced at the others who were deep in conversation with Kalen. They seemed so confident, so determined. Maybe they were right. Maybe there was still hope. Back at the makeshift lab, Rachel continued to study the Vorthax. She discovered something important. The parasites thrived in environments rich in nitrogen compounds. Epsilon 7's atmosphere was unusually high in nitrogen, which explained why the Vorthax had spread so quickly. This insight gave her an idea, but it was risky. She shared her thoughts with Alex, who listened intently. "What if we use genetically modified bacteria?" Rachel suggested. "We could create organisms that consume nitrogen more efficiently than the Vorthax, starve them of their food source." Alex raised an eyebrow. "It's a good theory, but it's dangerous. If the bacteria mutate or spread uncontrollably, we could destroy what's left of this planet." "I know," Rachel admitted, "but it might be our only chance." The two decided to present the idea to the rest of the team. When they gathered around the table inside the ship, Rachel explained her plan. Everyone listened carefully, weighing the risks and benefits. Emily was supportive, seeing it as a creative solution to a difficult problem. Daniel, however, remained skeptical. "We're talking about introducing another foreign organism to this planet," Daniel argued. "How do we know it won't cause even more damage?" "It's a calculated risk," Rachel replied. "We'll monitor the bacteria closely and make adjustments as needed. We have to try something." After much discussion, the team agreed to move forward with the plan. Alex got to work designing a delivery system, a network of drones that could disperse the bacteria evenly across affected areas. Meanwhile, Emily worked with Kalen to ensure the Zorans understood both the potential benefits and dangers of the YI plan. Kalen expressed gratitude for the humans' efforts but couldn't hide his fear. "Your idea is bold," Kalen said, "but it scares me. What if it fails? My people cannot endure another loss." Emily placed a reassuring hand on his arm. "We'll do everything we can to make sure it works. Trust us." As preparations continued, tensions between Daniel and Emily grew. Daniel believed the mission was too risky and wanted to prioritize getting everyone back safely. Emily, on the other hand, felt strongly that abandoning the Zorans would betray the very reason they had come to Epsilon 7 in the first place. Their arguments became heated, often spilling into conversations with the rest of the team. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Rachel and Alex sat outside the ship, staring at the desolate landscape. Rachel broke the silence. "Do you think we can really pull this off?" Alex shrugged. "I don't know, but we have to try. If we give up now, what does that say about us?" Rachel nodded, feeling a mix of determination and anxiety. She knew the stakes were high, but she also believed in their ability to find a solution. Together, the humans and Zorans worked tirelessly, united by a shared goal, to save Epsilon 7 from total destruction. Days turned into nights, and progress was slow but steady. The drones were nearly ready, and the genetically modified bacteria showed promising results in controlled tests. Still, doubts lingered in the minds of the team. Would their plan succeed, or would it lead to even greater disaster? Only time would tell. The day finally came to put the plan into action. The humans and Zorans gathered around the drones, which Alex had spent countless hours building and testing. These machines were small but powerful, designed to fly across the planet and release the genetically modified bacteria evenly over the affected areas. Rachel had worked tirelessly to ensure the bacteria were stable and effective. She knew the risks. If the bacteria spread too quickly or mutated in unexpected ways, they could cause even more harm than the Vorthax. But she also believed this was their best chance. Kalen stood nearby, watching silently. His large eyes reflected a mix of hope and fear. He trusted the humans, but he couldn't shake the worry that something might go wrong. Emily stayed close to him, offering words of encouragement. "We've done everything we can to make this safe," she said softly. "You have to believe it will work." Daniel, however, remained unconvinced. He paced back and forth, his arms crossed tightly over his chest. "This is a mistake," he muttered under his breath. "We're playing with forces we don't fully understand." Alex heard him and turned around. "Do you have a better idea?" he asked sharply. "Because if you do, now's the time to—" "Say it." Daniel stopped pacing and looked at Alex. "No, I don't," he admitted. "But that doesn't mean we should rush into this without thinking it through." "We have thought it through," Rachel interjected. Her voice was calm but firm. "Every step of this plan has been carefully considered. Yes, there are risks, but doing nothing is riskier." The tension between Daniel and the rest of the team was clear, but there was no time to dwell on it. The first wave of drones was ready to launch. Alex gave the signal, and the machines lifted off the ground, buzzing softly as they ascended into the sky. Everyone watched as the drones disappeared into the distance, carrying the bacteria that would hopefully starve the Vorthax of their nitrogen-rich food source. For the next few days, the team monitored the results closely. At first, things seemed promising. The Vorthax population began to decline in the areas where the bacteria had been released. Small patches of green started to reappear on the barren landscape. Plants that had been struggling to survive suddenly showed signs of recovery. Even the air felt fresher, as if the planet itself was taking its first deep breath in months. The Zorans were overjoyed. Kalen expressed his gratitude to the humans, his voice filled with emotion. "You have given us hope," he said. "For the first time in weeks, we see life returning to our world." But just as the team began to feel optimistic, disaster struck. The bacteria, which had initially behaved exactly as Rachel had predicted, began to mutate. It started consuming not only nitrogen but other vital elements in the soil. Entire fields that had shown signs of recovery turned gray and lifeless overnight. Rivers that had started flowing again dried up once more. The humans and Zorans watched, in horror as their progress unraveled before their eyes. Kalen confronted the humans, his usual calm demeanor replaced by panic. "What have you done?" he demanded. "You've made things worse." Rachel felt a lump form in her throat. She wanted to defend herself, to explain that they hadn't anticipated this outcome, but the words wouldn't come. Emily stepped forward instead. "We didn't mean for this to happen," she said. "We're doing everything we can to fix it." Kalen's expression softened slightly, but his fear was still evident. "Fix it? How? Our planet is dying faster than ever." Back at their base camp, the team argued fiercely about what to do next. Daniel's skepticism had turned into outright anger. "I told you this was a bad idea," he shouted. "Now look. What's happened?" "Enough," Alex snapped. His voice cut through the tension like a knife. "Pointing fingers isn't going to help anyone. We need to focus on finding a solution." Rachel nodded, wiping tears from her eyes. "He's right. We caused this problem, and it's our responsibility to fix it." The team fell silent, each person lost in their own thoughts. Finally, Alex spoke up. "What if we use the same drones to deliver a chemical inhibitor? Something to slow down the bacteria's mutation rate?" Emily frowned. "Do we even have the resources to make that?" "We'll figure it out," Alex replied. "We don't have a choice." Rachel immediately got to work analyzing the mutated bacteria. She discovered that while it was spreading rapidly, it was still vulnerable to certain chemical compounds. With Alex's help, she developed a formula for an inhibitor that could stabilize the bacteria and prevent further mutations. It was risky and untested, but it was the only option they had. As they prepared the drones for another launch, tensions remained high. Daniel voiced his concerns one last time. "If this doesn't work, we're leaving. I won't let us stay here and die for a lost cause." "No one's asking you to sacrifice yourself," Rachel said firmly. "But we owe it to the Zorans to try." The second wave of drones took off, carrying the chemical inhibitor. This time the team waited anxiously for results. Hours passed and the silence was almost unbearable. Finally, Rachel noticed a change. The mutated bacteria began to slow down, their chaotic movements becoming less frantic. The damage they had caused didn't reverse immediately, but it stopped, getting worse. Kalen arrived at the base camp, his face lighting up with relief. "It's working," he said. "The destruction has halted." The humans exchanged weary but hopeful glances. They weren't out of the woods yet, but they had bought themselves, and the Zorans, some much-needed time. The Zorans could now focus on developing a long-term solution to repair their planet's ecosystem. Despite the partial success, the weight of what had happened hung heavily over the team. They had come so close to making a catastrophic mistake. Daniel, in particular, struggled with guilt. He approached Rachel later that evening as she sat alone outside the ship, staring at the stars. "I'm sorry," he said quietly. "I shouldn't have doubted you." Rachel looked up at him, surprised. "It's okay," she replied. "We all doubted ourselves at some point. What matters is that we kept trying." Daniel nodded, sitting down beside her. "Do you think we'll ever be ready for missions like this, for problems this big?" Rachel smiled faintly. "Probably not. But maybe that's why we're here. To learn, to grow, and to prove that even when we fail, we don't give up." So the night wore on. The humans and Zorans worked together to assess the situation and plan their next steps. Though challenges lay ahead, there was a newfound sense of unity between the two species. Together, they had faced the impossible and found a way to persevere. And for the first time since arriving on Epsilon 7, the humans allowed themselves to believe that they might actually succeed. The humans and Zorans worked side by side in the days that followed, trying to stabilize the situation on Epsilon 7. The chemical inhibitor had slowed the mutated bacteria, but it wasn't a permanent solution. The planet was still fragile, and the Vorthax remained a constant threat. Every step forward felt like 2 steps back, but the team refused to give up. They knew they had to find a way to restore balance to the ecosystem before it was too late. Rachel spent most of her time in the makeshift lab, studying both the bacteria and the Vorthax. She was determined to understand how the two interacted and why the bacteria had mutated so unpredictably. Her hands moved quickly as she adjusted microscopes, recorded data, and ran tests. Alex joined her often, helping wherever he could. Together, they brainstormed ideas for a long-term solution. "We need something that can outcompete the Vorthax," Rachel said one evening as she stared at a sample under the microscope. "Something that can thrive in this environment without causing more harm." Alex nodded thoughtfully. "What about plants? If we introduce hardy vegetation that can survive here, maybe it will take over and push the Vorthax out." Rachel's eyes lit up. "That could work, but we'd need to find plants that can grow fast and adapt to the nitrogen-rich soil." "Earth has plants like that," Alex replied. "We can modify them to suit this planet's conditions." The idea gave the team hope, but implementing it would be difficult. They needed seeds, equipment, and time, resources they didn't have in abundance. Emily suggested reaching out to Earth for help, but Daniel was against it. "We can't wait for supplies from Earth," he argued. "By the time they get here, it might be too late." "He's right," Rachel agreed reluctantly. "We'll have to make do with what we have." The humans turned to the Zorans for assistance. Kalen and his people were eager to help, offering whatever resources they could spare. They provided samples of native plant species that had survived the Vorthax invasion, hoping these could be used as a foundation for Rachel and Alex's plan. The Zorans also shared their knowledge of the planet's unique climate and soil composition, which proved invaluable. As the team worked, tensions between Daniel and the others began to ease. He still worried about the risks, but seeing everyone's determination softened his skepticism. One afternoon, as he helped Alex repair a damaged drone, he admitted, "I guess I've been too focused on what could go wrong. Maybe it's time I started thinking about what could go right." Alex smiled. "It's never too late to change your mind." With renewed energy, the team pushed forward. Rachel and Alex modified the remaining drones to carry seeds instead of bacteria. They chose a mix of Earth-based plants and Zoran species, carefully engineering them to grow quickly and resist the vortex. Emily worked with the Zorans to identify the best locations for planting, ensuring the seeds would have the greatest chance of success. Daniel focused on maintaining the drones, making sure they were ready for another round of deployment. The day of the launch arrived and everyone gathered to watch. The drones hummed softly as they took off, carrying the seeds that represented their last hope. The humans and Zorans stood together, their eyes following the machines as they disappeared into the sky. For the first time since arriving on Epsilon 7, there was a sense of cautious optimism. Over the next few weeks, the team monitored the progress closely. At first, there were no visible changes. The barren landscape remained gray and lifeless, and doubts began to creep back in. But then, slowly but surely, small green shoots appeared. Tiny plants pushed through the soil, defying the odds and taking root. The sight filled everyone with joy, especially the Zorans. Kalen approached the humans, his expression one of gratitude and wonder. "You have given us a miracle," he said. "These plants are stronger than anything we've seen before." "It's not just us," Emily replied. "This is the result of all of us working together." The plants grew rapidly, spreading across the affected areas and crowding out the vortex. Their roots absorbed nitrogen and other nutrients, starving the parasites and preventing them from spreading further. The air became fresher and rivers began to flow again. Life was returning to Epsilon 7, thanks to the combined efforts of the humans and Zorans. But the victory wasn't without its challenges. The mutated bacteria, though stabilized by the inhibitor, still lingered in the soil. Rachel warned that it could pose a threat in the future if not properly managed. "We need to teach the Zorans how to monitor and control it," she said. "Otherwise, it could mutate again." Emily took on the task of training the Zorans, using her skills as a linguist to communicate complex ideas in simple terms. She worked closely with Kalen, who was eager to learn. Together, they developed a system for tracking the bacteria and preventing future outbreaks. It was a daunting responsibility, but the Zorans embraced it with determination. As the mission neared its end, the humans prepared to leave Epsilon 7. They had accomplished what no other species had been able to do. They had saved a dying planet. But they knew their work wasn't truly over. The lessons they had learned and the bonds they had formed would stay with them forever. On their final day, the Zorans held a ceremony to honor the humans. Kalen spoke on behalf of his people, thanking them for their courage and ingenuity. "You came to us when no one else would," he said. "You showed us that even in our darkest hour there is always hope." The humans listened humbly, each of them feeling a deep sense of pride and fulfillment. As they boarded the Odyssey and prepared for departure, they took one last look at the planet below. Greenery now covered large portions of the land, and rivers sparkled in the sunlight. It was a world reborn thanks to their efforts. Back on the ship, the team reflected on their journey. They had faced unimaginable challenges, made mistakes, and learned valuable lessons. But through it all, they had proven that humanity's greatest strength lay not in its technology or power, but in its resilience and compassion. As the Odyssey entered hyperspace, Rachel gazed out the window at the stars ahead. "We did it," she said softly. "We actually did it." Alex grinned. "Yeah, we did. And who knows? Maybe there's another world out there that needs our help." Daniel chuckled. "Let's just hope the next mission isn't as messy as this one." Emily smiled. Messy or not, we'll be ready." And with that, the Odyssey sailed onward, carrying its crew toward new adventures and new opportunities to make a difference. The Odyssey soared through the vast expanse of space, leaving Epsilon 7 far behind. The humans aboard the ship were quiet, each lost in their own thoughts. They had done something extraordinary, something no other species had managed to achieve. But as the planet faded into the distance, they couldn't help but reflect on everything they had experienced. It had been a journey filled with challenges, mistakes, and moments of triumph. And though they had succeeded, it wasn't without cost. Rachel sat by the window, staring at the stars that streaked past like tiny streaks of light. Her mind replayed the events on Epsilon 7, the barren landscapes, the frantic efforts to combat the vortex, the near disasters caused by the mutated bacteria, and finally, the sight of green shoots breaking through the soil. She felt a deep sense of pride but also humility. "We didn't do this alone," she said softly. "It was the Zoran's strength and our determination together that made it possible." Alex, who was tinkering with one of the drones they had brought back for study, looked up and nodded. "Yeah, teamwork saved the day. I just hope the Zorans can keep things under control now." "They will," Emily chimed in from across the room. She was flipping through her notes, organizing the lessons she had learned during their time on the planet. "Kalen and his people are smart. They'll figure it out." Daniel, seated at the navigation console, remained silent for a moment before speaking. "Still, it's hard to believe we pulled it off. For a while there, I thought we were going to fail. You weren't the only one," Alex admitted with a wry smile. "But we didn't give up. That's what matters." The team fell into a comfortable silence, each person processing the weight of what they had accomplished. They had faced an impossible situation and found a way to succeed. But more than that, they had grown as individuals and as a team. Their differences, whether it was Daniel's caution, Rachel's optimism, Alex's resourcefulness, or Emily's empathy, had complemented one another, creating a balance that allowed them to overcome even the toughest obstacles. As the days passed, life aboard the Odyssey settled into a routine. The crew prepared reports for the United Galactic Council, documenting every detail of their mission. They included data on the vortex, the modified bacteria, and the plants they had introduced to Epsilon 7. They also wrote about the Zorans, their culture, their struggles, and their resilience. The council would review the reports and decide whether to send additional aid to the planet. But the humans knew their work wasn't finished. Saving Epsilon 7 had been just one step in a much larger journey. There were countless other planets in the galaxy facing their own crises, and humanity's role in helping others was becoming clearer. The success on Epsilon 7 had proven that even a young and relatively inexperienced species like humans could make a difference. One evening, as the ship drifted through the quiet void of space, the team gathered in the common area to share a meal. It was a rare moment of relaxation, and they took the opportunity to talk about the future. "What happens when we get back to Earth?" Emily asked, breaking the silence. "Do you think they'll send us on another mission?" "I don't know," Alex replied, leaning back in his chair. "But if they do, I'm ready. This trip showed me that we're capable of more than I ever imagined." Rachel nodded in agreement. "It's funny. Before this mission, I thought we were just along for the ride, like we were tagging behind more advanced species. But now, I think we have something special to offer." Daniel smiled faintly. "Maybe that's why they chose us. We're adaptable. We don't give up easily." "Exactly," Emily said. "And let's not forget how much we learned from the Zorans. Working with them reminded me that solving problems isn't just about technology or science, it's about understanding and cooperation." The conversation turned lighter as they shared stories from their time on Epsilon 7. They laughed about the early days when they struggled to communicate with Kalen, and they joked about the countless hours Alex spent repairing broken equipment. Even Daniel cracked a smile when Rachel teased him about his initial skepticism. But beneath the laughter, there was a shared understanding, a bond forged through adversity. They had started as strangers, brought together by circumstance, but They had become something more, a team. Each of them had contributed in their own way, and each had grown because of it. When the Odyssey finally entered Earth's orbit, the crew felt a mix of excitement and apprehension. They were eager to return home, but they also knew their lives would never be the same. The mission had changed them, opening their eyes to the vast possibilities of the universe and humanity's place within it. As they stepped off the ship and onto Earth's surface, they were greeted by officials from the United Galactic Council. Cameras flashed and reporters shouted questions, but the team barely noticed. Their minds were still on Epsilon 7 and the countless other worlds waiting beyond the stars. Later that evening, after the celebrations had died down, the four of them met in a quiet park near the spaceport. The night air was cool and the sky above was filled with stars. They sat together, gazing upward, feeling a sense of awe and wonder. "We did good," Rachel said after a long pause. "But there's so much more to do." Alex grinned. "Yeah, and I wouldn't want to do it with anyone else." Emily laughed. "Same here. Though next time maybe we can avoid the whole mutated bacteria thing." Daniel shook his head, smiling. "No promises." They all laughed, the sound carrying softly into the night. For now, they were home, surrounded by familiar sights and sounds. But they knew their journey was far from over. Somewhere out there, among the endless stars, another world awaited, with its own challenges, its own mysteries, and its own people in need of help. And when the call came again, they would answer. Because that was who they were now, not just humans but explorers, problem solvers, and helpers. Together they had faced the impossible and emerged stronger for it, and whatever lay ahead, they would face it together.